Your name?
George Honey,
Jackie Honey.
Okay.
And where do you live?
live here in Entiat, 2003 Max Place, Entiat, down by the park.
And I live at 2273 Entiat Way, up right across from the new fire station.
Okay.
So what brought you to the Entiat Valley?
Forest Service. I transferred down from Twist.
Okay. And how long were you working with the Forest Service?
Oh, about 25 years. I retired from there in 1989.
Okay. Have you worked at anything else besides the Forest Service?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I got my first government check when I was 11 years old, driving a team of mules, putting up hay, 8 miles for the Forest Service
Where was that?
in the Okanagan National Forest. We run the ranch for the Forest Service. Had 70 head of mules and horses, putting up 150 ton of hay, and that was during the Second World War. The CCCs had a big camp right there. Well, the COs, they moved them all in there. That's conscientious objectors. They wouldn't fight in the war, but they'd come out and made them do civilian work. So a lot of them putting up hay, and some of them went to smoke jumping later on. That's where we lived there.
What did you do after you retired from the Forest Service?
Went into consulting, forestry consulting. I'd been a logger early in my career. Spent 5.5 years in the military.
What year did you move to Entiat?
July or August of '66. I come in March. I came to Entiat in March. Couldn't find a place to live. So we moved into Milltown up in Iberville.
We moved to Twist first from California and lived there until we moved here.
How long did you live in Twist?
How long did we live in Twist, Papa?
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, we moved there from Mount Auckham, California. And he was with the Forest Service for that. That's why we went to Twist, but then we transferred here.
I'd been logging in California after I got out of the service. Well, I was logging in the Met House. And then they went on strike. And being a union hater, a bunch of us quit and went to California because we'd never make the money back that would go on strike for a nickel an hour. And so we moved and started logging in California. And then from there, come up on vacation, and the ranger at Twist said, "I hear you were a sergeant in the Army." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I got some crews I want you to straighten out." Okay. So I said, "You can't pay me enough money," because I was making good money logging in California. But they offered me a deal I couldn't turn down, so I did, and I thought, well, I could take advantage of my service time and get credit on federal retirement, so that's what I did. That's why I come back. Then I worked summers for the Forest Service and winters logging, falling timber up along the North Cross State Highway in that country. For Lloyd Logging, Twist Wagner.
Well, when we met you, you were an auctioneer. How did you get into that?
Well, I got into that in the mid-'70s when we moved here to, and we started a Kiwanis Club here, and we were trying to figure out how to raise money, and somebody said, "Let's have an auction." So, well, we don't know an auctioneer. I said, "Well, I got a friend that's an auctioneer, so I'll be the auctioneer." And I auctioned, and people liked it, and I've done more auctions, and people kept asking me to do auctions, so I said, well, I'm going to start a business. So I was working for the Forest Service at that time, and just setting my own hours. So I worked 10 hours a day, 4 days a week, That left me 3 days on the weekend to run the auction company. So that's what I've done. So I got started.
Well, when did you move into the museum house? Did you do that right after you moved from Ardenvor?
Yes.
Yeah, we lived in Melcamp from 66 to 67, and then we moved to the museum house,
In 67?
67. And I lived there until 71. I don't remember how long they lived there afterwards. But
I don't remember either.
they lived there, at least until 72, because my brother Mike didn't graduate till 1972.
I think they might have lived there till 76.
That's what I
75
was-
or 76.
Well,
When we
and-
moved from here to Bird Canyon, up there at Harris's, lived in that house that's gone now.
And I know you were living out there in 76 because I had my son in 76, and I came over here to visit Mom and George, and they were living out at the, in the orchard house out there
The one
right then.
that, the house that burned?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
Cornerstone House.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Went through a flood, filled the basement, lost all my military pictures.
No,
I was in Germany, Holstein,
that little canyon has flooded a couple of times.
yeah.
Oh,
Then from there, we moved to a Forest Service house in Entiat,
and then you built that one down there where you are now.
yeah,
I don't know what year you moved in there though.
close to 80, something like that. 100 years from now, they'll never know the difference.
When you were living in the museum home, what was it like as a home?
It's a good home. Had a big sawdust furnace in the basement. And by the sawdust by the truckload, Earl Larson lived in Ardenvor. That's Donna Larson's husband. It was, and you'd call Earl and say, I need a load of sawdust. And he'd bring a truckload and dump it by your basement window. I'd shovel it in the basement. And then fill the hopper on the furnace, turn it loose. It'd run by an auger.
So that great big grate in the floor would warm up?
Yeah, that would heat the house.
Did you use the fireplace, or was the fireplace
No.
there when you lived there?
No, we didn't use a fireplace.
Okay, but was it there in the house?
I think it was.
I think so,
Yeah,
yeah.
I vaguely remember that.
The reason I moved out, they raised the rent to $64 a month. That was only one reason.
The floor was starting to give way when you moved out, wasn't it?
Yeah, in the kitchen there, the washer machine went down through the floor.
Oh,
Not all the way to the basement, but it vibrated.
when you lived there, was there a barn there
No,
behind the house?
The garage was there, right?
yeah,
Just the garage.
Okay, and that's the same little garage that's
It's there
behind
now.
there now?
Mhm.
yep.
So when you drove in, did you drive in by that lower road?
No,
Along the
they
edge of
didn't
the
have
park?
that,
The road that's in there now, that goes down there now,
Yeah,
no,
across that open field, wasn't it?
no.
Oh, wasn't?
It was a road to come over the top.
okay. Where they filled
Well,
in?
I guess you guys would steal my pickup and go run around the park.
Yeah, we did that a lot.
There were several houses in there.
Okay, who was your nearest neighbor?
Oh, what was his name? I can't think of what it was.
Is it the house where there's just a concrete?
Where the foundation is, right,
Foundation
left
now.
right now?
Yeah, there was two of them, and then,
Mitch McCarroll, the McCarrolls lived there. Yeah,
that's the upper house.
right.
In the lower house, they had another one there, was Todd, the Todd girl, her and her husband lived there.
Do you know who lived there before you?
No,
No.
When did the Oldhams live there?
They lived there in 1959 or 60.
They lived there before George. and-
Yeah, before us, but I don't know who was in there just before us.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
PUD was good to work with, they were really nice. At that time, they've kind of changed in the last few years.
Back when you were living in the house and it was kind of like the 60s, 70s, can you have somebody from that past that you think was kind of memorable? Somebody from Entiat that sticks in your mind that you'd like to talk about?
The heck was the guy that run the tavern?
I don't remember.
Oh,
But I worked for Kathy's Cafe. It's where the Mom's Kitchen is now.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 13 years old, I started working there as a dishwasher on weekends. And then I worked full-time in the summertime. And then from that time until I graduated from high school, I worked there after school as a waitress. And I worked there until I graduated from high school in 1970. So Kathy was a character. And her husband, Jerry, he was the town sheriff. And we used to call him Barney Fife because he was a little guy and he was silly like Barney was, you know, on TV on that show. So those two people were really memorable in my life anyway.
He liked to drink beer with everybody, too. It was a good town. Everybody had fun, had good restaurant, good bar. The log
Yeah.
cabin was booming at that time. Of course, the mill was going, lots of things happening. Lots of money floating around.
I was good best friends with Kathy's daughter. She had 4 daughters. One was in my class, and we were real great friends. And so she and I worked there together all the time. We had some fun there. We used to get crazy in there sometimes. We'd want people to leave so we could close up, and so we'd get the broom out and pretend like we're chasing mice.
First thing you
And
want to
the
be careful, they'd be riding the broom going out the door.
And the boys used to, we had a drive-up window, and the boys used to drive up there and throw frogs in at us and stuff. So it was fun. It was fun working there. And of course, then you knew everybody in town then because they all came in there to eat all the time, sit and hang out and drink coffee or, you know.
Go to the bar or
Yeah,
whatever.
there was a bar in the back and,
Yeah, I don't know when they started the logging shows here. Got a professional logger. That had to be about 1972, after the big fires. Excuse me. I'm just telling the story here ahead of your question.
No, that's fine, I like that.
But we had quite a logging show here in Aniak. And Kiwanis Club helped me. I had a logger that was by the name of Lentz out of Salem, Oregon. He was a world champion. And he was up here falling timber for helicopter logging. And he helped me, and we put together a logging show, had crosscut saws, the whole thing, chopping and rolling logs and everything. And that was going for several years. Finally, he got killed in the woods, falling timber, and got on some rocks and slid off this cliff. Piled up the rocks, I killed him. They flew him, hung him on the helicopter and flew him out. His little kids were there, so Kiwanis Club, I talked him into fixing some logger ashtrays with the loggers and all that stuff on it. I went to Salem and presented at the big logging show down there. Presented it to the family. Thanked them for that. So that's one thing we've done. We started the ball field out here on this end of town. We got Billingsley, PUD, and he was really nice to work with, and we got that ball field where we could use it. PUD was good for that. I guess the city's got it now, haven't they?
They do, they
It
took it
still,
over.
it still belongs to the PUD.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we done that through the Kiwanis Club to get it started.
I remember when I was working at Kathy's Cafe in 1970, there was the big fire up the river, and we made sandwiches for the restaurant. We made sandwiches for all the firefighters up there. I remember making mountains and mountains and mountains of sandwiches, never ending. They did breakfast, some kind of breakfast setup before I got there, but then we did the lunch, did all the lunches for the firefighters.
Remember when that fire started, I had a crew up there on the fire, first one there. They called me from the ranger station, said, "How big's the fire?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. It's really big." I said, "We're not fighting it." "Well, how many people you got?" "Well, I got 8 people, a D8 cat, and the fire's all over the mountain." So I said, "Let me start burning, setting it on fire down along the highway." And it took me 2 hours to talk the ranger into it. Then I went along with torches, started touching it off ahead of the fire. That's where it's turned to green down there by Preston Creek, where we touched all that off ahead of the main fire. That's slowed it down. There wasn't enough fuel left to get it real hot and go up the trees.
Was that the Dinkelman fire?
No, that was the Entiat fire, 1970.
Okay.
The Dinkelman fire was after that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it went 140,000 acres. It went clear over to Lake Chelan.
Yeah, the sky was always orange and smoke in the air all the time.
When was that fire?
That was in the 70s.
1970.
Yeah.
Then the flood was in 1972 that killed those 4 people. There at Preston Creek, come down and wiped the houses out, took them into the river. This one kid was in the living room, they see him going down. And he was standing there and he made it and got out of the river. I don't know how he done that, but the 2 women, they never did find. The 2 men, they found one down the river where across the, well, there was a little island, you know where the cemetery is at, where Bruce Wick and Ray Sanders lived. They found one body that far down, one man. Man's seemed to be more buoyant than a woman. They never did find the 2 women. They found the 2 men. That was
It would
in
be the
70.
opposite, but yeah.
That was in 1972. You
That was
notice-
after the fire, the couple years.
Yeah. You notice after a forest fire that was usually floods because the black seems to draw a big rain in the first couple of years. That's when it can't absorb all the moisture, and here she comes.
We got notices on, you know, be careful because you've had a fire and you need to be aware that there
This
could be
last one,
flood.
that,
Yes.
yeah.
One thing that's good about that, weather was this fall, it had a chance to green up a little and establish some root system, so that won't be so bad unless you just get a big gully washer there.
That's true.
Yeah.
Sorry to lead you off track.
Okay.
I'm sure that happens a lot.
We have to stop and knock it back on once in a while.
Yeah. What next?
Well, I'm looking. Joe, do you have any questions?
We had the first helicopter logging in the state of Washington here, 1972.
How far down are you on that sheet?
Oh, I've kind of gone down through them.
Carson helicopters out of New York was the first ones to come in and start chopper logging. I got pictures of that.
Was the dam in when you moved down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you really weren't familiar with what they call Old Town then?
No.
Yeah, I was. I used to drive through it once in a while from the Met House to get to Wenatchee. I've been through it a couple of times. It was quite a town.
But I wasn't. It was already all gone when town was pretty much the way it is right now when we moved here.
And what grade were you in when you started school here?
8th grade.
He went from the 8th and graduated from,
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
Did you help put your number on the new
Yeah.
rock? You
Mhm.
did.
Yeah,
It's been interesting because when we ask, it depends on the age.
yeah.
The older the people are, the girls weren't invited to help put the numbers on the rock.
Yeah, there was only a few, I think there was 4 of us girls that went up there. And the others were just the guys, but there was 4 of us that hung out together all the time, and we decided we're gonna go up there and help. So
Yeah.
we climbed up there. I think we got in the way more than we helped, but
Oh, no, you were helping,
yeah.
being in the way. Do you know a fellow by the name of Ray Honey?
Yeah,
That's his brother,
Okay.
yeah.
I used to watch him play basketball.
yeah.
Okay.
He was an all-state, state scoring record.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a good teams there in Winthrop.
Yes.
Yep, just talked to him a couple of days ago.
Oh, good.
Our coach, was that, guy by the name of Dick Fight
Uh-huh.
from Lewis, he calls every once in a while and talks to my brother.
Uh-huh.
Asks how we all are, and called Jack Boswell down in Boise, Idaho. He talked to him, Fight did.
Mhm.
He took us to, we left Winthrop and took our team down into Idaho, and we played teams down in Idaho that time
Mhm.
on a road trip during Christmas holidays.
Mhm.
He was quite a guy.
Yes. You betcha. Were they still, did they still have, after you moved here, did they have the ice rink?
Yes. They used to flood the field right down there by the mouth of the river
Uh-huh.
every winter, and us kids would go down there and skate on it. That was a lot of fun. It wasn't much of a surface really, but it was skatable and it was really fun.
So why do you suppose they don't do that anymore?
I don't know, but you know what,
Not enough cold weather.
I mentioned it when they were asking for input for the new city park.
Mm-hmm.
And I suggested that they put an area down where at the end there, at the south end of it, where the concrete is. I suggested that they make a skate park in there and then fill it in the winter and make it an ice skating park. And they didn't, I think the city was worried about liability or something, so they didn't want to even consider that.
Yeah, if we worry about liability, we'll never do anything.
But I thought that would have been a great idea, because those kids used to play down there all the time,
I
you
think,
know?
talking about ice, in 1968, I was living in the house down there. The Columbia River froze clear across that winter. And it froze clear across and stayed froze about 2 days, and then it warmed up enough and started breaking up. But it doesn't even get cold enough now to freeze
Freeze
any
near the
ice
edge.
along the edge.
Yeah.
But it froze that river clear across, 68. It was colder in the mountains, we got more snow, and it got colder,
It's like,
longer.
like the story that there's 4 boys born to the family, and so when they graduated from high school, they got to be 21, the tavern was across the river. So when the first one had his birthday, he walked across the water to the tavern. And the second one, he walked across the water to the tavern. And the third one walked across the water to the tavern. And the fourth one got up there and he kept sinking. What's going on? Well, the first 3 were born in January, and he was born in August.
Oh!
He couldn't walk on the water.
He couldn't walk on the water.
There used to be a ferry down there too, a 1-car ferry when we first moved to the
No,
museum.
you can get 2 or 3 on
Oh, could you?
Mhm.
I just remember I thought it was like 1 car. And us kids used to go down there and pester the guy all summer long and help him with loading the cars on and unloading them.
there. Kate,
Was it Kate?
yeah.
I was trying to remember who, and I can't remember the years that it was there, but I remember we used to go down there and pester him all
In
the
the
time.
70s, you go to Spokane to a basketball tournament or something, you could catch the ferry across. head for Spokane, you didn't have to go to Wenatchee and back it.
Yeah, and I think we need a ferry today.
I do too.
I honestly do. Were you here when all the skiing was going on in the Entiat? I don't hear of it
Yeah.
anymore, but there used to be a lot of
Yeah.
skiing here. You had a tow rope and.
Yeah, it was up, wasn't it right up there above where the bird?
By Dill Creek, between Dill and Preston.
Mhm.
Yeah, we used to go up there and ski a little bit. We had those big old long wooden skis.
Okay.
Had a Model A motor turning,
Mhm.
Ray Sandage was work on it, stuff, he was up there too.
I don't remember what it was like really, what the condition on the ski hill was, but I guess it was pretty good. And those who didn't ski, we'd go up there and slide down on inner tubes and stuff.
Mhm.
George used to take us in the wintertime up. Where'd we go? Was that up Dinkelman? When you used to pull us up the hill behind the truck in the wintertime? And then we'd slide down on the inner
I
tubes?
don't remember.
He used to take us up there and we'd go way up in the hills and behind his truck, and then he'd turn us loose and go down the bottom and wait for us.
In the Methow, there winter, we'd take horses and tie a bunch of kids on sleds behind the horses, pull up the hill, and down we'd go. And have a big weenie roast, have a big bonfire, everybody get warm. Of course, it was below zero.
Well, down where you live now, they used to put up a platform down there and do square dances.
Oh, did they?
No, I missed that part.
You didn't,
They did that when we came, we went
Oh,
down
yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah,
That
they
was-
did a little bit, I remember, yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
I remember that.
yeah.
so.
That
any-
was in the 80s.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun living in that old house down there because it was so close to the park, and anytime there was anything going over there, you could just walk over there and join in and see what was going on. And every day before I had to go to work in the summertime, every day I'd go, first thing I'd do is go out and go swimming in the lake. There wasn't all that milfoil and stuff there then. And the geese weren't all hanging out there because we had cats and dogs down there, so there was no goose poop down there. But we used to go down out and swim in there all the time, almost every single day. I had a cat, I used to call him out to me, and he'd swim out to me, and I'd pick him up, turn him loose, and he'd swim back to shore. And so, and when we lived down there, we used to steal Papa's truck. Him and Mom would go up to Twist to see Grandma and Grandpa, and we wouldn't go along most of the time. After we got older, we just didn't want to go, of course. And so he had this old Chevy pickup truck and parked out in the front of the house there, and we put rocks where the tires were, and then we'd steal the truck and drive up the driveway and drive back and forth through the park. And my big brother Bill would yell at us, "You guys are gonna get in trouble, get that truck back. You just quit doing that." Me and my little brother driving it back and forth through the park. One day we got brave enough to go over the highway and up the hill up there where Abbey Dowdy Park is.
Mhm.
And of course, we got spotted by someone that knew them, and I go, "Oh no, they're gonna tell on us," but they never did. But we'd always park the truck back right where it was, never taking into consideration that the gas gauge had changed.
Mhm.
I don't know if he really caught on to it or not, or what he was thinking about, what happened to the gas, but he never lectured us about it. And finally, after I graduated from high school, I was telling him about it, and we were laughing about it. You know, he goes, "Oh, you think I didn't know?"
Did you ever slip out the window?
Oh, yeah, yeah. My bedroom was on the front side there, closest to the house, or the water. And me and my girlfriends would meet over in the park. Sometimes there'd be a couple of boys over there.
Right there.
My best friend was Gail Chamberlain. She lived up there where Lala lives now. And so she'd walk down to the park from there, and I'd crawl out my bedroom window and go over there, and we'd hang out in the park with the boys and sneak back in before we got in trouble. But
Well, actually, you were in trouble. You were just that was a
Yeah.
different kind of trouble.
yeah, yeah. We never did anything malicious or anything though. You know, we just went over there and sat swing in the park, in the swings, and talked to the
Yeah.
boys, and you know how teenage kids are.
Well, Judy tried to draw a diagram of the museum, and it's a little bit out of proportion, but
Yeah,
Is that-
Quite a bit out of proportion, but I've just walked through it. So he said that was your bedroom?
Yeah, that was my bedroom. Mhm.
What was
That was Mom and George's bedroom. And my brothers, we only had the one bath.
Yeah,
My brothers lived in, and that was their bedroom. And that was the dining room. This was the
Oh,
living
okay.
room and the kitchen.
kitchen. And that was like a little
and the
pantry or
stairway
whatever.
went down the basement where the furnace was.
Ah,
Yeah.
did you keep
It was a
anything
great
down
big-
there besides the furnace?
Yeah, fruit, canned fruit.
Yeah, we canned, Mom and I canned every summer. There was a big picture window at the front there. I had my
Yeah, you've
first
been good.
UFO viewing from there. It was my job to do the ironing every Saturday, or I couldn't go out in the evening with my friends. So I was standing in front of the window doing the ironing one Saturday morning, and bright daylight, and all of a sudden there was this big bright light up by Mission Ridge, and just like that, it was down in front of the house. I mean, just that quick. Everybody thinks I'm nuts, but I wasn't. I was a teenager. I wasn't drinking or doing drugs or anything, so it wasn't anything to do with that. But just like that, it was down in front of the house, and Mom was in the kitchen, and I called Mom, "Mom, come here real quick and look at this." And by the time she got in there, it was gone again. So she didn't get to see it, and they all think I was nuts. But so I saw it.
Your own UFO?
Yes, yes.
Mhm,
I have no idea what it was, but it was pretty strange.
mhm. I know, you know, my folks lived in Birch Mountain in Wenatchee, and I walked out one night on the porch and I looked across at Mission Ridge, above Mission Ridge, and I saw a UFO.
Yeah, see? You probably saw the same one I did.
I don't know, I saw it there, and boy, when it moved, it went,
See?
yeah.
See, somebody else. Good, I'm glad to know somebody else saw it besides me.
Yeah.
I figured it didn't want Mom to see it, so that's why it left so
Oh,
fast.
I see.
She wasn't allowed to see it, just me. But Mom and I used to can in there all the time, and I remember one time we had this huge accident. The canner blew up, and we were canning beets, and the beets went all over everywhere in the kitchen and all over the place, and we had to clean it all up and repaint the kitchen, and it was just a mess. And I remember when we were kids, we used to catch the school bus up at the top of Kamak Hill in Olin up there. And there was the apple orchard was still in, and we used to pick apples off the tree every day while we were waiting for the bus. By the time it came time to pick apples, there were no apples left on that tree, of course. But I think they left it for us because they knew we were snacking on it. And when we were in high school, we used to be able to get out of class in picking time to go help pick apples. And I remember me and my little brother went and tried to do it one year. We thought, oh, this will be great. We'll go pick apples and get out of school, you know. So we went up there. It was the hardest job I ever did. And I got to where he'd climb up the ladder and pick him and put him in his bin, and I'd take him out of his bin and put him in mine. He kept wondering why his bin wasn't getting full. He was like, where's all my apples going? And then we tried doing the cherry picking too, and I sat in the tree and ate more cherries than I picked. Than I put down in the bin, so I never did get paid for doing cherries because I ate more of them than got down to the bin, so.
Well, what's the most interesting thing that's happened to you while you were working for the Forest Service?
Well, I started working in marketing. I was a sales administrator in charge of timber sales here on Chelan and Entiat. And they started a marketing position. I said there's lots of things we can be doing. That's when I got the big toy mill in here and started a big chipping operation in the woods and shipped that out. And shipped coal logs to Bullfrog over out of Clearwater. Those were interesting times in marketing. But fought a lot of fires. That was the main thing.
You got the helicopter logging going too, didn't you?
Got that going. So.
about, did you do a lot of hunting and fishing?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd hunt and fish.
You have a good fishing story?
No, I got more hunting stories. Go up to Frog Rock, go in by Vern, Bill Creek up there. You come in off Preston Creek and go in across Brennigan and that way. And then walk there up on Devil's Backbone in 2 or 3 feet of snow, breaking a trail. Pick out your buck, because they were all over. Shoot one, drag it down. People say, "Where'd you get that?" I said, "Up on top of the mountain." Most of them wouldn't walk. There might be one other guy you might see all day. But you had to work for them. But lots of deer. And they had till the big fires come in '70, and then they panicked and had an open season after deer season. They opened it up and they had a slaughter. Just about wiped the herd out. Game department got out of hand and they couldn't control it. So that's where we had quite a few years of trying to recover the deer herd.
We didn't do much fishing with Papa when we lived here. He was too busy with the Forest Service stuff, but we used to go up to Twist and go fishing with my grandma a lot, my grandma and grandpa, at the Twin Lakes and Patterson Lake. And me and my brothers tried some fishing up in Mad River up there when we lived in Mel Camp, but we played in the water too much to catch any fish. So.
A friend and I went up to Twist one time. We were going to go up there fishing, and for some reason we stopped right there in town, and we walked over to the creek with our fishing poles, and we had, right there in town, we had caught all the fish we wanted.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
There was lots of fish to be caught back then.
Well, we figured everybody else would go way up. Nobody fished there for some reason. I don't know why.
I'm gonna ask you each one last question. What is there about Entiat's past, something that no longer exists, that you really, really miss?
The old town. It was a town. This has got away from it. It's scattered out and looked like somebody just took a big handful of mud and threw it at the wall. That's what Entiat looks like now. I think this development on the river is something that will be good for this town. A lot of people are waiting to spend some money in Entiat to build, and so that'll help. But I think we have a problem degrading ourselves all the time. We ought to hold out and make this town good. Right now it looks like a storage town.
With all the storage facilities.
I think it's the storage capital of the world.
That's what somebody else said too, I don't know. I don't know, I just kind of miss, for myself, I miss the things that we used to do as a kid that the kids don't get to do now, you know. But it seems to me like some of the parents now are trying to get the kids more involved in outdoor activities like we used to. We used to play outside all the time and never be in the house, you know, and swimming out in the lake all the time. I mean, there's always a bunch of us kids down there playing and swimming and having a good time, and our parents didn't worry about us, you know. We just go up there and we knew to come home when it was time to eat lunch or come home when it was time for dinner, and other than that, we weren't home. We were out playing all the time.
Sounds like your childhood, Judy.
Now they don't let the kids grow up. I tried to hire some kids, and all the paperwork you don't have to go through. They used to kick us out at 8 years old in the fields and irrigating and milking cows and all that. And now we take bucking horses and use them for pack horses and go into the hills. Us kids 10 or 11 years old and go there and stay 2 weeks by ourselves. Now they hang the parents for cruelty or something. Silly.
Okay, thank you very much for this interview.
Sure.
One thing that was kind of a thrill in helicopter logging is being in the Forest Service. I wasn't supposed to get in those ships because they weren't certified to haul passengers. Well, I said, let's go for a ride and look this sail over. So we did, and the pilot said, here, you want to fly it for a while? So I flew the helicopter. But the Forest Service really canned me if they'd have caught me. They didn't.
It's too late now if they find out, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a great life. It's been very,
Okay, do you guys have any questions you'd like to ask?
No, I think all mine got answered as
Did
we
they?
went along, yeah.
Well, I've still got a lot of questions, but I won't.
the thing that scares me is this cell phone thing and these iPads they got.
See,
When
they
the
look at you-
electricity goes off or something goes out, what are we gonna do?
Panic, that's why.
That's right.
They might too.
Look what happened at the football game. The bank of lights went out.
Nobody knew what to do, huh?
It was good before TV. I know once we moved to town finally and lived in Winthrop, my brother and I would take a purse and lay on the highway and get down over the bank and we'd have a string tied to it. You'd hear somebody slam on the brakes on the car and jump out. Oh, here's a purse. And about the time they reach for it, we'd pull it.
Honoring kids, huh?
Yeah,
That's
Sounds
where
like
you got
something
it
she
from.
would do.
Yeah, that's where I got it
Yeah.
from, yeah. That is. And then he wondered why we were so ornery. But, you know, we had a really good time growing up here as kids. Living up in Mill Camp was a lot of fun because there was a lot of kids that lived up there. And we'd go, in the summertime, we'd play in the creek in Mad River all the time. We called it Crazy Creek. We used to play in it from the minute we got up in the morning until we went to bed at night. We were always out there playing in the river. And playing in the orchards and
Yeah,
walking over to Cooper's and getting candy and, you know, typical kid stuff. But we were outside all day long, every day playing.
Ruth cried for
Oh, Mom,
6 months after I moved her into Ardmore. Moved her into a
dumpy little place.
place, had a big hole in the wall. The sink was broke. I think the toilet was broke.
It was awful. We lived in this really nice house in Twist right down on the
Just
river.
bought a house.
Just as you came over the bridge into town, there was a house down there on the river, and that was a really fun place to grow up too. I remember we used to play in the river all the time there too, but it was a really nice house. And then we moved up here, there was no place to live except that little shack up in Ardenborough, and Mom was so mad. She just cried and cried because we had to move into that place. It was tiny and it was all beat up, and of course, you know, we fixed it up and made it a home, but, you know, Mom was not very happy about that. She was a lot happier when we moved down here to the museum house, and a lot more space and,
Well, you must have had beautiful views from there of the river and,
oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a nice little house.
It was really fun growing up there, like I said, because we met our friends in the park all the time and played. And
Were you the oldest kid?
no, I have an older sister, an older brother, and
Okay.
one younger brother.
Okay.
And then Mom and George adopted Athena, who was my youngest brother's daughter, and they raised her as their own.
Okay.
So he basically raised 5 kids.
5 kids, yeah.
Did your sister live in
Something
the
matter
house?
No,
with
my
me.
sister
Was already older.
yeah, she
Well,
graduated from high school in
We had raised
Twist.
4, so.
And she left then. And my older brother Bill, he stayed up in Twist, I think the first year that we were down here, because he was really into playing football, and he was good. So he lived with the neighbors and stayed up there for another year or so after we moved down here.
He stayed up there to graduate.
Oh, did he? He graduated up there too?
Yeah.
I thought he graduated down here.
Graduated at Twist.
Oh, yeah.
But that's one thing they don't have now. Used to be growing up, I'm sure you remember this. Each town had a town team baseball. And we'd go into Canada, Winthrop would. We had one pitcher that signed with Milwaukee, one that signed with Seattle. And one that was an all-star in the Navy baseball. We had some good ball teams in this country then. Even towns like Mansfield and Malott.
Yeah, in the summertime, we would play it's either softball or baseball all summer long.
Yeah, it's got away from that.
Yeah.
Communities, the families used to have big family picnics.
And then at high school, after basketball games or football games, we always had a dance down in the lunchroom. What's the lunchroom now? We have dances down there every night after all the basketball or football games. You know, typical teenage dances where everyone stood around, looked at each
I
other.
was gonna say, yeah, a lot of standing around.
Yeah, a lot of standing around looking at each other.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. You
Yeah.
betcha. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
Are we done?
I
Yep.
could-
Okay.
I could go